To start here, hey everyone, my name is Danny Kressel. Before we begin, I did want to take a moment to thank you all for taking the time out of your week to attend this webinar. We hope that the topics that we're covering today can provide value to everyone here as you prepare for winter sales. Today we'll be covering 3 beneficial features recently released for Ask More Commerce. Those are selective guest checkout, fast flow, and cross-sell. For each feature, we'll be talking through use cases and then demoing configuration. And for a quick intro to the team, today we'll be hearing from first Marty, who is on the implementation and professional service team. Then we'll be hearing from Becky, who is on the customer service team. And then I will be moderating and I will be answering any of the questions that you submit. And I am on the implementation and professional service team as well. I just have a few housekeeping items before we start. The first thing I wanted to call out is that this webinar is being recorded. So if you have any colleagues that were not able to attend this webinar, we will be putting together an email that has some additional information as well as a link to this recording, and you can share that with them. Secondly, don't save questions for the end. We do ask that you ask lots of questions throughout the whole presentation. You could type your questions into the Q&A section of Zoom rather than the chat section, and we'll get your answers there. We will have an opportunity after each presenter to answer questions, and then at the end, we will have time dedicated for a Q&A session as well. So to kick it off, Marty is going to review selective guest checkout, which will help to optimize product setup and enhance the checkout flow. So take it away, Marty.
Thanks. So with selective guest checkout feature, you can increase conversion by specifying select products as a guest checkout product. In the past, this was not configurable by product. It was either all products store-wide or no products. So again, with this enhancement, you can reduce cart abandonment and accelerate checkout speed, which both should lead to increased sales. To provide a brief overview, this feature allows resorts to configure if checkout require users to log in to complete a purchase. When enabled, they are presented with one of these 2 screens. So the left image initially prompts the customer to check out as a guest with an optional login button. The image on the right initially prompts the guest to check out by signing in with an optional guest checkout button. The resort can decide which screen to enable based off their needs, but note for resorts utilizing identity, guest checkout happy path must be used. So referring back to the image on the left, here the guests can either 1, input their first name, last name, and email, as this information is needed to A, send an order confirmation email to the guest to provide proof of purchase, and it's also needed to track the purchase in RTP. Once these details are input, the guest can proceed through checkout. And again, they do optionally have that login button that they can select. So a few details and considerations before you decide to set up guest checkout products. For existing accounts, you can see in the topmost image that if a guest attempts to check out with an email that exists in RTP, a login prompt is triggered. This is to help mitigate creating duplicate accounts in RTP. The guest checkout can be configured at 2 different levels. Store level will enable all products in the store to require guest checkout. And then product level, you can specify which products should be guest checkout products. This leads to the question, what happens for mixed carts? If the guest has a selective guest checkout product in their cart and a product is not marked as a guest checkout product, then the guest will not be prompted to check out as a guest and will be required to log in. For other Aspenware checkout features, such as required assignments and age rules, these are supported. But note that as you can see in this bottommost screenshot, that since the guest is just being created, no age is going to be pre-populated for that guest. Thus, if you're also utilizing waivers, the guest can sign a waiver without having input an age. So lastly, just think about the pros and cons and which products it makes sense to enable for. Your pros are going to be improved speed, more conversions, more sales. Your cons are going to be things like duplicate customers in RTP. But this is mitigated by the "we found your account" prompt, and also by a customer type in RTP being flagged as a guest checkout customer. So that should help you manage with merges in RTP. For use cases, Any product where logging in has a low benefit can be set up as a guest checkout product. Take retail products, for example. The benefits of tracking these types of products aren't too high, even if Irish at Aspenware wants to track people that are purchasing his t-shirt line. Other products as well, such as free guided hikes, beer garden, festival ticket, gondola ride, really whatever makes sense to reduce barriers to checkout. You could even have media products. Those will work, but note that reload typically wouldn't be an option. So configuration for selective guest checkout is very simple. And note that in-depth details on all of this is laid out in Aspenware's documentation. But in RTP, you must configure a guest checkout customer type in RTP. Typically, those already exist, so Aspenware just needs that provided, so we can add that to the Unity config file. So once RTP is set up to work, there's just a few steps for you to complete in Aspenware admin. So let me jump over to this. You'll want to go to the all settings screen, and this dictates if the guest first sees that guest checkout happy path or sign in happy path in checkout. Again, true is going to be required for guest checkout happy path for identity resorts. Then you'll want to jump to order settings. If you haven't been on this screen before, there's a different navigation path, but you can also just type in order settings. And again, this is all listed in documentation. You'll first click anonymous checkout allowed, and this enables it store-wide. So be really careful if you click this and then click save. Every single product you have in the store will now be not requiring login. The one down here is selective guest checkout. You'll want to click this, and then when both of these are enabled, this enables selective guest checkout to be defined at the product level. If you only have this one selected and not this top one, selective guest checkout will not appear. You do have to have both of these marked for selective guest checkout to work. So after you've checked off both of these, you can click save. And then we're just going to use a t-shirt example today. It's really simple setup, like any product attributes you have in there, those will be normal. The only setting you have to now click is selective guest checkout on the product. So you'll mark this, you'll click save all settings at the bottom, then you'll scroll up and hit save and continue edit. You do have to click both of those as this will refresh and clear your cache automatically. So now when you go to the product, it will be a selective guest checkout product. Since I'm logged in on this screen, I'm going to jump to an incognito window. And then once this loads up, I can add this product to my cart. And then once I click checkout, it'll take me to this screen that you've kind of seen from those screenshots. I could optionally choose to log in, but to show you what this flow looks like, I'll just put in my information. When I click next, you're going to see that it's going to recognize that I do have an account that exists in RTP. So it will prompt me to try to log in. I don't have to listen to that. I can still continue as a guest if I decide to do so. And then the rest of the steps is just regular checkout configuration that you have set up. So with that, it's a really quick, simple setup, but it has a really big impact. Are there any questions that we have on this topic?
You have one, Marty. The question is, how are guest accounts managed in RTP? Are there problems with duplicate accounts?
So there always is going to be an account created. As soon as you enter guest checkout and you type in that email and click continue, that's when the account gets created into RTP. So there will be those, but they are listed with a certain type in RTP. So you can filter out reports and things. You can identify all guests that checked out as a guest, and then you can do different merges and things. So I wouldn't really say it's an issue, especially with the ability to like quickly check out with different products.
Cool. It looks like we have another question that came in from Alex. The question is, does the option for guest checkout on the PDP setup page only show up once the guest checkout is configured on the site? So that's, Marty, I think that's specifically talking about the product admin page.
Once you have the right version of Aspenware that has the latest, it'll show up on this order settings page. There's no additional plugin or anything that you have to download for this to work.
Yep. And I think the on the product editor page itself, that should show up there by default, even if you don't have that configured. Am I correct, Marty?
Yeah, additional product settings will show even if you don't have that set up, I believe.
Cool.
This,
Also, as a reminder to everyone that's listening, we do have a Q&A section. So if you, on your Zoom toolbar, you'll see there's the chat section. Next to that should be a Q&A section. You post your questions in that Q&A. They're a little bit easier to answer and get those answers across to you. So if you want to use that, that'd be great. Oh, Marty, we have one more question before we move on to the next section. This one's from Liz. Is there any current reporting that would show guests who use guest checkout? So it could be used to help locate the duplicate records in RTP for cleaning.
Are you talking about reports on Aspenware side? We can probably make those. I have to check internally, but RTP side, you could set up a report that has all that information.
Mm-hmm. There is a specific guest type that you would configure that the guest checkout uses. So it's an easy field to pull a report from in RTP. And Marty, I think that's it for open questions.
Cool. Cool. So one of the features we're most excited about is fast flow. Fast flow is a streamlined purchase flow that matches a pass number to the corresponding guest without requiring the guest to log in. With this, guests can reload to group members outside of their own household, and guests can make additional purchases with less friction. Most often, too, this feature will be paired with guest checkout to accelerate the purchase flow. So to provide a brief overview, this feature allows guests to enter their median number on a PDP by either one, scanning a QR code, or by typing the median number into the fast flow field. If the guest is validated as eligible, you'll see their first name and last name will be returned. And when they add the product to their cart, the product in checkout will be associated to this guest. This method allows quick assignment whether the guest is logged in or not, and even allows purchasing for guests that are not associated to the shopper's household. In this next screenshot, when FastFlow is combined with guest checkout, the guest's first name, last name, and email are pre-populated if they exist in RTP, making this the most streamlined checkout process to date. Continuing with the overview, there are primarily two different flows guests can go through. The guest can navigate to the PDP. Here they can go through a few different entry methods. They can enter their pass number in the FastFlow entry field. They can click that QR code icon and scan their pass's QR code, and it will display if the guest is valid or not. Thirdly, if the guest happens to be logged in, and you guys have the option to enable assignment by selecting from group members, the guest can still enter their pass number, but they could also select this down here. So that way they can still assign to non-group members if they decide to do so. The other method is the deep linking entry method. Here in step 1, the media is set up with a QR code, and the guest uses their phone to scan that QR code. That QR code's link will direct them to a URL in step 2 on the brand site where they can select from different FastFlow products. Note that the URL they clicked and went through initially also contains the guest's pass number. Then in step 3, once the guest has selected a product from the brand site, they are directed to Aspenware's PDP, and their pass number is automatically entered in the product description page's FastFlow field, so they can quickly check out by just clicking add to cart. So there's a few details and considerations before you decide to set up FastFlow products. Consider using guest checkout. Most often, this will be utilized as it creates the most streamlined flow. So make those same considerations we touched on earlier for guest checkout. Orders that are completed without logging into the pass numbers matching head of household account will appear under two different accounts in RTP. One, the order will appear on the head of household account, and two, the same order number will appear on the account that is used for checkout. So that's two different places it'll show. But if the head of household account is logged in and FastFlow's field matches the head of household's median number, then the order is only going to appear on one account. So all these different methods, they really just ensure that guest services can locate the order when they go to look for it in RTP. FastFlow products do not appear in checkout's assignment step. So you can see on this screen, it's always skipped for FastFlow products. But if the guest is purchasing a FastFlow product and a non-FastFlow product, the non-FastFlow product will appear on this step. And then also note that when you utilize a dated product, dates must be selected before the FastFlow entry field can be input. So if you do have a large calendar that's going to pre-select, you can also pass dates in from different links and sites. But just note there is a message that appears a date must be selected. Now, FastFlow has so many different use cases. We talked about media being entered into the FastFlow entry field, but actually any unique identifier from RTP can be used, such as IP code or even a voucher. Aspenware can modify the stored procedure used for FastFlow to look up a guest with any of those unique identifiers to make a purchase to the correct matching guest. Customer also linking works to FastFlow. We gave an earlier example how a QR code could be placed on media. The same method can apply to emailing a guest with a URL. Or Flake could email a URL prompting guests to purchase an additional lesson. These emails can pass the date entry as well as media number to Aspenware's PDP, thus requiring the guest to only need to click Add to Cart when they land on the product page, as the guest and date have already been selected. When combined with reservations, FastFlow can be used to complete reservations without requiring any human intervention at all. So Mountain Collective dates can be booked online, and the guest can even pick up their media through a pickup box, thus requiring no guest services intervention. Icon reservations can be made too. Even if the icon guest is not hydrated into your RTP, they can be hydrated and validated through this flow. Wholesale and third-party tickets will work as well, such as those sold by Costco. But note that these advanced configurations will require Aspenware professional services involvement in order to tweak the proc that does all this validation. And then my personal favorite is FastFlow can be used for upgrades and upselling. So imagine you're out on a powder day, you get to the bottom of the run, and you see this mess. Increasingly, resorts are copying Disney's strategy of offering an upgraded pass for access to a fast lane. In this nightmare scenario, you could have a QR code on the guest media, they scan it on their phone and are directed to the e-com store. Already their media ID is pre-filled, and all the guest has to do is click Add to Cart and then complete payment. Boom, crisis averted, you skip the line, and your 9-year-old's whining is quickly replaced by joyful cheers on the slopes. Similarly, guests can upgrade additional ski days, add lessons, rentals, and even more with less frictions to purchase. So configuration, it's not overly difficult. There is a few steps. So just to highlight the RTP part, and again, all of this is really well written in our documentation. But steps to complete an RTP, you have to have the stored procedure that FastFlow utilizes set up. Most likely, you're going to work with Aspenware to set that up initially. Additionally, you'll need a prompt associated to the FastFlow stored procedure. A product header code to sell the FastFlow product must be set up. And optionally, FastFlow uses RTP's age rules for validation. So if age rules are required, that must be completed within RTP. Now to show you set up in Aspenware Commerce, first you'll go to the plugin page and you'll make sure that the FastFlow plugin is installed and enabled. If it's not, you'll be able to install it here, and afterwards it does require a site restart. So just make sure that piece is complete. Afterwards, you can go to the FastFlow plugin page, which will be located here under Ask More Commerce. On this screen, it's just language strings and different settings. So you kind of saw earlier, there's different messaging throughout this. So you can put those pieces in there. Oops. So that's where the language strings will live. You can also go to the normal area of language strings to modify these. And then settings, you'll have an RTP prompt code. So this is what's going to reference and call the proc to be used with FastFlow. And then we have something called a regex code. So that example I gave where you have a past media, you scan that with your phone, it then links you to another page. That scan actually has a URL that contains the customer's either IP code or their pass number in it. So this regex code is going to strip that part out that we need to do the validation. So you may require some Ask More assistance because there might be some coding involved with determining what the regex value should be here. So these are the store-wide settings. You'll save these here. Once that's complete, you're now ready to set up the product to be a FastFlow product. Again, you can have attributes and things. I have age on this. I have assigned to on this product, so you can assign somebody on the checkout screen. And then just start date, because we want to have a start date for this product. We do recommend enabling selective guest checkout. You don't have to. You could still require a guest to log in if that is desired. And then you'll see this FastFlow that appears beneath that. So if I uncheck this, it minimizes those options. So you'll need to have this checked. Pass scanner, you can turn that on or off based on the fact if you have media that you want to have scannable based off a QR code. These settings down here will override those global settings we talked about on this page. So if you do want to change something with a title or subtitle on these pages to have different text based off different products, you can do that. So once you have updated all of this, you'll click Save All Settings. You'll scroll to the top and also again have to click that Save and Continue Edit button, as this is going to refresh the site and make sure all those savings have taken place. So from there, you can see I'm logged in as myself here, and I have this FastFlow guest. I didn't mention if you're logged in, it does allow you to assign eligible guests based off that same proc. You can see Marty is not eligible, so I don't have that option. But to show you an example of a user not logged in, you'll see when you first get here, it does require a date selection since we have a date selected. Some products might not have this, so you wouldn't see that in this case. But for this instance, I will have to pick a date. And once that's done, I can now enter in the FastFlow field. If I type in something like 1 that I know is not going to be a valid RFID number, it'll tell me that's not valid. You can have different messaging on this. It's customizable within Ask More's admin. You can also return different values like first name, last name, other things. So you'll see when I type in a valid user, it'll return their name, and you can have different information. This Go You, for example, you could say you rock, or just click like add to cart to continue. If you wanted to change users, you'd click reset here, and then you could type in a different user. And this is all customizable too. So you see I have Rob Zombie, his name shows up here. When I click add to cart, he shows up as well. So if I go to checkout, you'll see that it pre-populates his first, last, and email because they recognize him in the system. And again, the rest of the steps are really just the same. If the user has media and we recognize that and they want to reload, they'll have the reload option too. And kind of like we talked about with guest checkout, it'll prompt them to log in since we know they have an account in the system. Any questions on this one, Danny?
We have one right now. It says, for our ski school products, instructor tipping is a common ask from guests. Would we be able to use FastFlow for instructor tips?
You could use FastFlow for instructor tips. An example would be you could put a QR code up or send an email to the guest after their activity. And once they follow that link, it would take them to a FastFlow page that pre-populates with their instructor's IP code, for example. So when they add the tip, and you could have different pricing on there too, that you want to tip the instructor, they could then add that to cart and complete checkout. And using guest checkout too, you wouldn't require those guests to log in. So yeah, that could be a use case, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And you could also look into RTP, like it'll just show up on their IP code and information. So you'd be able to easily run a report and know who to like give that tip to.
Cool. I think that's the only question we have right now. Again, as a reminder, as we're going through and presenting on these topics, feel free to ask at any point in the Q&A section. So we have questions to talk about. Again, we'll also have a dedicated Q&A section at the end of the webinar here. So if you didn't get your question out and you have something that you're dying to know about FastFlow, we can get to it at the end as well. But I think at this point we can move on. So thanks, Marty. I'm excited for all the possibilities and unique setup that you all will come up with for FastFlow. Moving on to the next topic, it's going to be cross-sell. It also has a ton of opportunity to introduce new and exciting product mixes to your commerce store. So I'll send it up the mountain to Becky to give us some more details on cross-sell.
Perfect. Thanks, Danny. You guys see my screen? Hopefully as well.
Okay. Yeah, we can.
Thanks everyone for joining. So think of cross-sell as just another tool in the toolbox. It's a feature that you can use to dramatically call attention to specific products with a light box when a particular product is added to the cart. So you already have features like attribute combinations, add-ons, related products, and now you have cross-sell. This feature can be used to drive sales, boost revenue, while simultaneously assisting customers in completing their purchase. Cross-sell uses standard NOP functionality where you can advertise additional products when a triggered product is added to the cart. The standard NOP functionality advertises cross-sell products in a list under the mini cart as shown on the right. Aspenware enhanced this functionality by giving the resorts the option of adding a lightbox to the product display setup. So a lightbox is a pop-up window that dramatically calls all of your attention to the cross-sell products as seen on the left, and you have to take action to clear it. So the lightbox can be intrusive. So if the guest needs to add more product or attributes to their cart, the guest will have to click close or no thanks. Once more products are added to their cart, the lightbox will appear again, and you can customize how many times you want that lightbox to show. So think about the user experience. Is the lightbox appropriate, effective, or intrusive and a distraction? Whether you use the lightbox or not, the list under the mini cart will always show if cross-sell is enabled. Once a cross-sell product is added to the cart, it will no longer show in either the lightbox nor the mini cart. So cross-sell use cases. We recommend thinking about using cross-sell features for products such as paid parking, daily operate events, maybe aerial adventure parks and mountain coaster tickets, or maybe even spa, pool, or hot springs admissions. Think about undersold products that maybe don't get advertised as much. One core benefit of cross-sell is that each product, or PDP, is standalone. So you can set them up with dynamic pricing and customer roles, for example, and the cross-sell still works. For products using the pricing calendar, the cross-sell selection from the lightbox will skip the calendar and pre-select the date from the trigger product. This cross-sell feature does not replace core functionality that exists already. So think of cross-sell as a way to advertise products, continue to use easily navigable categories and pre-selected attributes and add-ons to ensure each family member has everything they need for their visit. For add-ons that are not dynamically priced, such as rentals or lessons, we recommend continuing to use add-ons and attributes. So the guest experience, you can walk them through that purchase path. And we think that that guest experience is far superior. However, if you have dynamically priced products, such as rentals, we think cross-sell is going to be a great solution for you guys. So the admin setup is very easy. There are two admin settings. The first is under configuration, settings, shopping cart settings. Here you'll find number of cross-sells. The default number is 4, but you can enter any number. The number determines how many products will show in the lightbox or the mini cart. You can completely disable cross-sell store-wide by entering 0. Secondly, under configuration languages, there are multiple language strings that you can customize, including the lightbox title and cancel button. So search for cross-sell as one word, and they'll all appear for you. These are also referenced in our documentation in the hub. So the next step is to add cross-sell setup to your triggered products. There are 2 settings within the PDP admin. First, you'll see the cross-sell tab. This is where you'll add other products as cross-sell items. Add these in the order in which you wish for them to display, and make sure you've set up each product as a separate PDP, just like you would for add-ons and related products before this step. Secondly, under additional product setup, you'll see a checkbox to enable the lightbox if you desired for that product. Once enabled, you can determine how many times you want the lightbox to display per user session. So this can be, again, any integer, but remember that the lightbox can be intrusive, yet also an easy way for guests to navigate. So walk through your desired guest experience and find that magic number. So let's take a look at how cross-sell works. So when a guest comes to your store and they might want to buy a lift ticket for the day, say they're going to come Saturday the 18th. When you come to the PDP and you add to cart, the lightbox appears with your cross-sell items. At this point, I need to add my spouse. So I need to clear this away. So I can either click close or no thanks. So I'm going to add another ticket to my cart. Lightbox reappears. At this point, my tickets are set, so I can click paid parking. Notice how the paid parking, because they use the same start date attribution, the Saturday, September 8th is pre-selected for me. Now, when I add this to the cart, I've also added cross-sell items to the paid parking PDP. So I'm going to get another lightbox with even more products that I want to advertise. Say I want to do sleigh ride dinner. When you come here, again, the September 18th date is pre-selected, and you can add a quantity box. So say I want 4 adults to come with me, add those to the cart. I also added cross-sell products to the sleigh ride, but at this point I'm done. And then you can also see under the mini cart, all products that are still cross-sold to your items in your cart. Now, say you want to remove sleigh ride dinner, you can remove it, and then it reappears at the bottom of the cross-sell because it's still eligible. We also recommend you can use the inline calendar display to ensure that the guests are choosing the correct date. But you can also just do regular start date and dynamic, whichever is your preference. So other attributes such as age do get carried over as well. Again, if you're using the exact same attribute and values, similar to linked products. All right, so Danny, that concludes my demo. This is a new feature for us, and we're really excited to share it with you guys. Let us know any feedback, and we'll all continue to learn creative ways to use cross-sell. And as always, we'll update our documentation. Danny, are there any questions out there?
You have one. So if I have multiple family members and each one needs to have lift, lesson, and rental, how do I use cross-sell where it's not overly annoying?
That is an excellent question. Trying to think of ways that you could do it. So you could use, for products that are non-dynamically priced, we could recommend continuing to use attribute combinations and add-ons. When you use attribute descriptions to walk them through each step, this is probably the best experience. If you want to have separate PDPs and potentially dynamically price them, one option is to add the quantity dropdown to maybe reduce the number of pop-ups. Or the second option is to keep the Lightbox pop-up to a minimum and then also use related products so they can navigate back and forth. It is a big consideration, so maybe lift, lesson, rental isn't the best use case for cross-sell. So maybe think more about products that are typically undersold or not as advertised to get more engagement from the guest.
Cool. Thank you. And we have a couple more questions from Jalen. He's asking, can I just have the cross-sell on the left side and not the pop-up? Actually, he corrected that to the right side. So he's talking about the mini cart. Can we just have the mini cart set up and not the light box?
Yes, you can. The mini cart will always show when cross-sell is enabled, and the light box is per product. However, if you want it to show one time just to say, hey, things are here, or not show at all, and then they will show in the mini cart. Yes, absolutely.
Cool. And one other question, Becky, from John. If you have 8 items eligible for cross-sell, but the light box is only set to host 4 items, does it just randomly pull 4?
So it'll pull them as you add more to your cart. Things will disappear from that mini cart and then get reloaded with your next product that you have set. And it'll reload in the display order, which is the order that you've added them each in your PDP.
Perfect. And then from Liz, she's asking if lift ticket is dynamically priced, but daily rental package is not dynamically priced, will the start date from the lift ticket be populated to the rental product accessed through cross-sell? They both use a dynamic start date attribute, but only the lift is dynamically priced.
My assumption is yes. That would be a scenario that I'd want to test to confirm. And if it's not working, that could be a tweak in the code, but my assumption is yes.
I would also add to that, as Becky mentioned during her presentation, for these add-on products for like rental type stuff, we don't want cross-sell to take over some of the functionality that already exists in Aspenware. We want to add it to it and maybe sell some of those undersold products on your site. So like the rental package, if it's not dynamically priced, I would say the best place to have that living on your product is as an add-on product. That way they're not switching between PDPs, that type of stuff. They're on one PDP and they're able to build their ski package for your lift and your rental from that one PDP without bouncing to a separate PDP. So those scenarios where you don't have the add-on product as dynamically priced, we would still recommend to use the add-on functionality that we currently have and have been using for years now. Becky, I think that's all questions that we have currently in the chat. So I think we can move on to that next slide. And that will wrap up all the scenarios that we wanted to cover in today's webinar. Again, we really appreciate everyone's time today, and we hope that you can take something that you saw today back with you to improve your guest experience. Also, I want to thank Becky and Marty for your time preparing topics for today's webinar. One other thing, please reach out to your Aspenware rep if you have any questions about implementing any of these ideas, and check out our revised documentation on hub.aspenware.net. Now, if you have any other questions that you're saving up, please ask them in the Q&A section. Could be about any of the topics that you saw today. We can go back and revisit selective guest checkout, fast flow, or the cross-sell capabilities. Looks like Connor asked a question, will we be emailing this recording? Yes, we will be emailing this out. We'll send up a follow-up email to this webinar. It'll have the recording, some additional information. We also have another webinar next week that we're going to be covering the new dynamic pricing plugin. So we'll be reviewing all of that. We'll have some more information on that webinar as well in the follow-up. So you should get all of that with the follow-up to this. Nick is asking to elaborate on why rentals may not be a good fit for cross-sell. And to elaborate on that a bit more, it kind of goes back to the fact that we don't want cross-sell to replace any of the functionality that we already had on the site. So we have add-on, and I think add-on is a great spot for the rental products. If the rental product is not dynamically priced, I think it works on the PDP a bit better, because with cross-sell, when you click the rental product, you are taken to a new PDP. So it's not a one-stop shop. They are kind of navigating across multiple products, and it's a bit more cumbersome than just adding everything from a single PDP. So if your setup allows, in that case, not dynamically priced products, then we would want to keep those into one PDP, and you kind of build your ski package again from that single PDP instead of bouncing from one PDP to another. Again, the biggest use case for cross-sell, or one of the biggest use cases for cross-sell, is really helping those undersold products. So I think Becky had some examples with events. I think events are a great idea to add to cross-sell, or maybe like spa packages, that type of stuff. Parking, stuff that you wouldn't typically have as like an add-on package for your ski products, but maybe you still want to advertise those type of products and upsell those. We have another question. If we wanted additional training on these topics, will there be a mass training for our resort reps? Definitely, if you need more training on this, or you feel like you want more, you can reach out to your Ask More representative. As always, like additional trainings, that type of stuff will be covered by the professional service team at Aspenware. We also have all of this information in the hub. So our documentation, hub.aspenware.net. Again, we will include a link to that documentation there so you can read more about it. It's going to have detailed steps to set up each of these different features, so you can go through and follow along with the documentation. Again, if you want additional training on top of that, we are more than happy to just reach out to your Aspenware representative and we can get something set up. Anyone else have additional questions? Still got some time left. We'll maybe give it another minute more and then we can probably wrap up if there isn't any questions at that point. Cool. It doesn't look like any other questions are rolling in. So again, if you have any additional questions and you weren't able to ask them in today's meeting, feel free to reach out to your Aspenware representative. If you need additional training, as I mentioned, reach out to your rep as well and we get something set up. Again, I do want to thank everyone one more time for taking the time out of your day to join us here. And I hope you all have a good rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much, guys.